Great show coming up for you on American Black Journal. We're going to talk about the Black History Month events at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. And we're going to check in with the Sphinx Organization as it celebrates 25 years of supporting young Black and Latinx classical string players. And we're going to close with a special performance by one of these talented musicians. Don't go anywhere. American Black Journal starts right now.
From Delta faucets to Behr paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support also provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm your host, Stephen Henderson. Black History Month is here, and the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit is celebrating with special exhibits, presentations, and discussions all throughout the month of February. I caught up with the museum's exhibitions manager, Jennifer Evans, to find out more about how the Wright is recognizing and paying tribute to Black history. So this is one of my favorite times of year at the Wright because it's Black History Month, of course, and the Wright always goes to such great lengths, I think, to make it clear that while we wish people were more attentive to the idea of Black history all year, this is a special month, and it's an opportunity to really focus people's attention on Black history and celebrate the idea of Black history. So tell me what people should be excited about this month here in February 2023.
Absolutely. So we have two great shows, exhibitions on show right now that are running through the end of the month. So people can come down and see those. They're both related to jazz music. One of them is pulled from the Bank of America collection that's called Jazz Greats. And it's a wonderful collection of Black and white photographs that capture really the most famous jazz musicians, performers, people like Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway. So that's a great exhibition. It's also classic photographs. So it's an art of photo taking and printing that we really don't do anymore because now we're so enamored with the digital world. So it's kind of a lost medium. The other exhibition was created by the Wright Museum curatorial team. This is called Detroit Jazz, The Legacy Continues. And this is also, of course, about jazz music, but it focuses specifically on the Detroit musicians that played here from as early as the early 1900s up until the 80s and 90s and musicians that are still, of course, playing today. So it really focuses on people that you can go and see perform live today, people that perform at the Detroit Jazz Festival or around local places like Baker's Piano Bar in Detroit.
Yeah. So the focus on jazz is really appropriate, of course, but also really interesting, given that this is Detroit and that we have such a rich history with not just jazz musicians, but of course jazz clubs, jazz recordings. It's such a key part of Detroit history. Talk about how you settled on that for the theme of this year's exhibits.
Well, I think you really hit the money there. Really, music in general is a wonderful expression in African American culture, also in American culture. But I think Detroiters, specifically Detroit musicians, use Detroit as kind of a training camp So a lot of musicians would come to Detroit to learn an improvisational style. They would learn about Black culture, but there was also kind of a informal style of learning here that they couldn't get anywhere else.
Mhm.
And so that's a big part of the exhibition, why musicians were attracted to Detroit, but then why they would go out someplace else. So I think you can make big money in some places like New York City, or traveling that music circuit, that tour
Mhm.
circuit.
Mhm.
But a lot of musicians would come here to have that informal training where they would have mentorship. They could like just play in someone's basement, and kind of have this great close connection with the music. And they can also really find a lot of freedom of expression, freedom of access to different kinds of places and styles.
Yeah.
And so Detroit is really situated nicely in that history.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories about Miles Davis is about the time he spent here playing at the Bluebird Lounge, and how it changed the trajectory of his writing, of his playing, and kind of changed the place that he had in jazz history. So it's just one example of the really great history that we have here. We're halfway through almost the month. Talk about the things that people can come do and see events wise at the museum in the last part of Black
Okay.
History Month this year.
Yeah. So we do have some film festivals and some screenings. We
Mhm.
are coming up, Ron Carter, Finding the Right Notes is a film screening that's happening on February 19th.
Mhm.
We have the Wright Family Fun Days, which is something that is happening on Sunday, February 18th. So there's a lot of different kind of family program. The Wright Family Fun Days is a reoccurring family programming that's happening on Sundays for the month of February. So I think that's a great opportunity to come and see the exhibitions, the two that we've just talked about, but also to kind of explore what other things are happening at the museum. I was going to talk about the glimpses of And Still We Rise, but that's a virtual program. So it's not
Mhm.
really something that people could come here for, but it's a great way to connect to the And Still We Rise exhibition, which is our core exhibition.
Mhm.
And it's a deep dive into that exhibition. So it's 22 galleries, of course, so it's a lot of information. But the glimpses of And Still We Rise helps visitors kind of hone in on a specific person, an event, something where perhaps And Still We Rise just touches on it, but then you get a 45-minute virtual presentation to really
Mhm.
understand who is this person, why was this important, and then it kind of helps people to get more information about that if they want to then explore on their own in deeper detail.
Yeah. Yeah. The Family Fun Days, the idea of Black History Month as a time to welcome families, into the museum, and in some cases get children their first exposure to the riches that we have, the cultural riches that we have at the Wright. It's one of my favorite parts of the celebration every year. We want to encourage everybody to go out and see the Wright and explore the Wright during Black History Month. Jennifer Evans, it was really great to have you here talking about all the great things that are happening. Thanks for joining us on American Black Journal.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
The Sphinx Organization is celebrating 25 years of transforming lives through the power of diversity in the arts. The group is focused on increasing the number of classical musicians of color and preparing those musicians for professional careers. Each year, Sphinx holds a national competition for Black and Latinx string players. This year's event was held last month right here in Detroit. And a little later, you're going to see one of the winning performances. But now, here's my conversation with Sphinx Director of Foundation and Government Partnerships, Achia Floyd, about the organization's tremendous impact over the past 25 years. Achia Floyd, welcome to American Black Journal.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So it's hard to believe that it was 25 years ago that my friend Aaron Dworkin started the Sphinx Organization. I can kind of remember that happening, but let's go back to the original idea here and the environment that created it, the dearth of musicians of color in classical music in professional circles 25 years ago, and how that's changed since Sphinx has been around.
Yes, our founder, Aaron Dorkin, 26 years ago now, we just finished celebrating our 25th year anniversary, started the Sphinx Organization with the Sphinx Competition. And his aim was the same aim. The vision and the mission of the organization has not changed. And I think that's important. The goal was to bring more Black and Brown people into orchestras. There was hardly any. There were a few in major orchestras, but there was no consistency. There was no support for Black and Brown individuals who wanted a career in classical music.
Yeah.
And over the years, that mission has not changed, but now we're seeing a different landscape because of that pursuit.
How different is it? How can we kind of quantify the influence that Sphinx has had?
It has been huge. I only joined the Sphinx Organization about a year ago, but I was a member of one of Sphinx's programs. I'm an alumni of the Sphinx Organization as well. And what makes that significant is not changing that mission, right? Being very intentional about it so that now when we have a landscape where people are more apt to have more Black and Brown people throughout the organization, the Sphinx Organization has been there doing the work. So now we're an authority on it for people in the industry. So they come to us for information, for access. And so we're able to use our cachet to help diversify the landscape.
Yeah. I know you referenced the national competition each year, which is an important part of the organization and an important part of establishing that pipeline of musicians into professional careers. But Sphinx does a lot more as well, and that's also been really key, I think, to not just establishing the idea that there should be more Black and Brown people in classical music, but finding the practical ways that has to happen. In other words, there are a lot of things that have to come together for a young person who might dream of being in a professional orchestra to get to there. Sphinx does a lot along the way to help that work.
Yeah, it's, as you said, it's the whole pipeline to become a professional musician. The question is always, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the answer is a lot of long-term practice.
That's right.
And support. So Sphinx starts at the elementary level and provides support all the way through performance. We have administrators. We have a program for administrators called Sphinx Lead to help create the belonging a musician who comes up in the pipeline needs to survive and thrive in the orchestral landscape. We have Sphinx Connect, which just ended in the competition. It's a conference in which we hosted over 1,000 people in Detroit from the industry, funders, artists, all focused on diversifying the arts landscape. And all of that starts with that pipeline and that competition program.
Yeah. So let's talk about this year's event and some of the highlights from it.
It was the first time since the pandemic began that we were able to do the competition in person.
In person, right?
Yeah, it was amazing. The whole vibe really was one where everyone was so happy to be there and celebrate in person at the Max and Marjorie Fisher Hall in Detroit. We held a competition of our 3 finalists, which are Black and Brown musicians, and the winner in Gioma also won Audience Choice as well, performing a work by Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who was also a Black composer who wrote in the 40s, 50s era. And it was really a celebration of years of work. And the winner, the audience loved her at the concert, and the judges really recognized her skill. And it was really just the way to end the conference and the celebration overall.
Yeah. And a little later, we're going to, for our viewers, share a little bit of Ngioma's performance. Talk also about the pandemic and the effect it had on the organization and the competition, and this idea that, hey, we're back in person, and that really does matter.
Yeah, overall, the pandemic had a huge impact on the arts as a whole, especially performing arts. A lot of people were furloughed from orchestras. Freelancers could not perform. And so the Sphinx organization pivoted. We created funds to just put money directly in the hands of our artists. We have over 1,000 alumni to support, right? And so we're also from marginalized communities. We support Black and Brown musicians. And so they were hit significantly by the pandemic. And so we were able to create funds with the help of funders and the hard work of our staff to support these musicians, as well as administrators in the field. And coming back, we got to bring everyone together to Detroit for days. The Renaissance Center was full of us for days in Detroit, despite the weather.
Yeah.
People came.
Right. So I also want to talk a little about, we've been talking about the effect that Sphinx and its work has had on classical music and professional classical circles in our country, but there's also kind of a reverse benefit, and that's on Black and Brown communities, the ways that they have changed because of the opportunities that have opened up because of Sphinx, and of course because of the presence of Black and Brown musicians in these professional circles.
Yes, we actually have a touring orchestra called the Sphinx Virtuosi, and they go around, and they've been around for, I believe, 10 or 11 years now. I could be wrong, but they go around and perform. It's an all Black and Brown orchestra, and we make a point of performing for Black and Brown audiences so that they see the possibilities, right? These are musicians who do perform in major orchestras as well, and they are just at that top level. And these kids do not get to see that. Our SPA program, Sphinx Performance Academy, is also held throughout the country. And we just had a testimonial from a kid who was talking about the fact that she had never seen Black and Brown kids her age. This is an early high school student in orchestra performing. And so after Sphinx, she just had a whole new lease on it all, and really started to find self-motivation because she saw the possibilities.
Yeah, yeah. So what's next for Sphinx now that the world has kind of come back together after the pandemic and you're holding the national competition in person? What's coming up?
You know, we really just want to grow our programs. We have grown a lot over the last 5 years and kind of develop a whole pipeline and landscape that starts at elementary, but also goes all the way to large grants to support artists' ideas, right? Composition. And we have now composers who are now residents at Chicago Symphony, at the Kennedy Center. And so we just want to make sure that we're able to continue to support them as best we can. And so we have to, continue to do our job as fundraisers and as advocates, and make sure that we keep this programming solid. And we just let the artists tell us where we're going to go. We survey, we keep in touch with what they want, and that's how we grow. That's how we find it best to grow, right? From our constituency, not necessarily what our pipe dreams are.
Great to have you here with us on American Black Journal. Congratulations on a quarter century of Sphinx. And of course, congratulations to my friend Aaron Dworkin, who I've always been a great fan of. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And you can watch the Sphinx Finals competition right here on Detroit Public Television on Monday, February 20th at 9 p.m. We're going to leave you now with a performance by the first place senior division laureate, Angioma Grievous. You can find out more about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org and connect with us anytime on Facebook and on Twitter. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
From Delta faucets to Behr paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support also provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation and viewers like you. Thank you.